the Poinciana West Community Development District meeting held this day, Wednesday, December 4th, 2018, 9:30 a.m. here in Mosaics. I'd like to call the roll first. Item 1, Supervisor Gregory.
Present.
Supervisor Leroux. Present. Supervisor Case. Present. Would ask everyone please rise and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item 3 on the agenda, which is if there's any public comment about this agenda in front of us. There'll be an opportunity later also to speak about the, from the public will have an opportunity to speak also. No one? Okay, thank you. That brings us to item 4, organizational matters. Item A would be the acceptance of the resignation of Shirley Bedetka, recently resigned. She has moved. We don't need a motion on that, do we, George, or do we? We do.
Typically, you do it.
We need a motion to accept. I'm going to get a motion to accept the resignation of Shirley Bedetka. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. I just want to make a comment that Shirley served, I think, very well for, I think, about a year and a half. She actually filled the seat also, and has recently moved out of town, and we really appreciated her service on the board. Which brings us to the next item, which would be item B, which would be a review of the letters of interest. And we have, luckily for Solivita, we have 4 interested parties, all well qualified to fill the seats of Shirley, and we're going to try to do Len also. It wasn't listed that way. I have a question for you. We did the advertisement for resumes, and I don't believe we have a problem if we appoint 2 people today instead of 1.
Yeah, that's within the board's discretion if you choose to do that.
Okay, is that okay with the other board members?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Again, we have the good fortune of having 4 candidates who are all well qualified, and we appreciate the fact that they have submitted their letters of interest, and I would offer to them an opportunity to speak to the board about their background, why they are interested in becoming a member of this board. Hopefully, at the end of that process, the board can come to a conclusion, and we will appoint 2 members to the board today, to seat them today. And I want to remind the other folks that are not successful that there will be an election in November for those particular seats. All right. And one of my concerns, and I'll bring it up now, is I'll probably ask the question, or you may want to address it. The boards are in the process of merging, attempting to merge. There'll be some joint meetings to discuss that, and I would be curious as one member to the posture of those individuals on that, and if they have a willingness, if the merger should be accomplished before the end of the term, if they would be interested in offering up their seat in order to make it happen. Again, at the joint sessions, we will be discussing the savings if in fact the boards are willing to accomplish that goal. Okay? Having said that,
Mr. Chairman, just one point in terms of process, and I know it's kind of a technical point, but I do think it's important, is rather than have a motion to appoint 2 people at the same time, you all need to appoint 1, have them sworn in, have them seated, and then they're available to vote for the next replacement. So I just want to make sure when we go through that process, nobody's surprised.
okay, thank you, Ron. Okay. Having said that, what I set up is in order, alphabetical order. Joe Clark is here.
Could I just make one comment? There's actually going to be 3 seats that are open this coming fall, not just 2.
Right, that's correct. There'll be 3 opportunities. Good point, thank you. Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Good morning. Excuse my lack of a voice, it seems.
You're the one that gave it to me?
Yeah.
Trudy. Trudy.
It's cold out there. It's going to snow any minute, I can tell. I want to thank you for the opportunity to apply for this position. My sole interest in the position is to see to it that the actions of the board represent the best interests of the residents of Poinciana West and ultimately in all of Solivita. I live at 206 Moore Park Way. I've been here almost 9 years. I retired from the University of Toledo in Ohio, but if you look at my resume, you'll see that most of it is California. Some people claim there's a will in the way.
Yeah.
Seriously, what we need to do, what this group I think needs to do, is to consider what's best for all the people here, not the organization, not the management company, not the law firm, not the developer. And that's what I would do. And to anticipate your question, Charlie, yes, I'd be glad to give up the seat if it is successful in merging. It appears to me on the surface that the merger is a good idea. I mean, it just sort of makes sense to do with less. But I understand there are numbers involved that we've got to look at, and I'd be more than willing to do that. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Hi, Dungeon. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, just one question. You served in several, with several organizations within Solivita also, right?
Yes.
Yeah, three clubs. And the Amenities Evaluation Committee, you on that also?
Yes, right.
Good.
Lita and I and David Roy started that organization.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Mhm.
Okay, Rhonda DeFranco, is Rhonda here? Larry Fair?
Yes.
Uh,
Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Larry.
I'm a Solivita resident of 7 years. I've spent 42 years working for Westinghouse, calling on builders, developers, contractors. I fully understand how it works, calling on builders, how the process works. I've done architectural specifications, change outs to better products, meeting the national electrical code. So I think I have a lot to offer around that way. I fully understand how the pricing works in the industry, which if you're not part of the industry, is very hard to understand. I took the lighting fixtures at 300% markup when you buy it. So if you add the markup on top to the contractor, and then the markup to the builder gives you, you may be paying a 500% markup on that product. The same thing if you go out to get a bid, there's a lot of other ways to go about, there are many processes to the bid. The original bid just begins it, then they go down to try to buy it at a better price. So the original price you're getting is a far shot from where you are going to be at the end. I totally agree with moving into one board. I think it would really help it. I think it's really time after the last 4 years that we have a change. This place has been torn apart. There are different factions. It doesn't feel the same way walking in the street now as it did 7 years ago. You know, wherever you go, there are conversations going on. What's happening? What's going on with the sales signs? Why are there so many sales signs? Then they read that, you know, Taylor Morrison just acquired another builder for $2.6 billion. You know, that happened. So there's a lot of questions that, basically, we need more transparency, I think. And the residents have the right to that knowledge, to look out for their future and what is going on. A very big thing right now is that if we do go with the affordable housing that they're looking to put in, what will happen to the current price of our houses? So this, you know, I will tell you that I have looked at other places, and I will tell you some places I've been to, there were 30 and 40 people from Solivita that were ready to hear it. And which is something we don't ever want to see a lot of people do. So, you know, if you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to answer.
Questions? Just one, Larry, to finish on that statement about the merger. If it was to happen and it made sense to everybody, would you be willing to forfeit your seat in order to see that take
Yeah,
place?
I appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Monique Mysterio? Monique, if I said that right?
Monique,
Monique?
no, say ma. Like you call your mom,
How about sir?
and then touch your neck.
Yeah.
It's that simple. So I've been in Solivita for a lot less than some of the other folks, just a couple of years. So what I have seen is all the different board interactions that I think could be better. And that's basically the reason I've shown some interest. You and I talked, I did not come to Solivita to spend my time working. Things on the other hand, if it's something that you can make a difference on, you should do it. Has always been my philosophy. I served on boards in New Jersey, elected multiple times to the school boards. I have also been appointed to some other things in the Defense Department. I understand board etiquette and culture and so forth. So I think this is not a bad thing for me to volunteer. I'm more than willing to do whatever in terms of the merger as well as in terms of giving up my seat. That's what it comes to. That's not an issue.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Okay. Any questions from the board? All right, I think Mike suggested, if any of the board members, first of all, want to make a comment, thank you so much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
And again, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the initiative to do this, and as Roy pointed out, there'll be an opportunity for 3 seats in November. So those that may not be successful, I would hope, would pursue it at that point. Any questions about any of the candidates? Yes, Michael?
Yeah, I just had a question, if we could designate which seat. George, are both seats have the same expiration?
Yeah, you have seat 3 and seat 5, both with terms ending in November 2020.
Okay, so I would just suggest you start with seat 3 and then do seat 5 second.
Great. Does anybody want to make a motion about a particular individual at this point in time?
I'll make a motion to appoint Joseph Clark to seat number 3.
Does anybody second that motion?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Joe?
We're going to swear you in first and then
Okay.
take your seat. The top form is the oath of office, and we'll go over the other documents once you're sworn in.
Okay.
As a citizen of the state of Florida and of the United States of America, and as an officer of the Poinciana West Community Development District, and a recipient of public funds as such officer, do you hereby solemnly swear or affirm you'll support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Florida?
I do.
Okay, if you want to join us up here, and
Congratulations, Joe. Welcome.
Thanks, Joe.
here, and then sign where it says board supervisor. And I'm going to wrap that.
Okay. Now, at this point, all 4 of us can vote.
I don't know if you want to go over, we want to
Yeah,
do
no,
it at once.
No, I think what we should do is go ahead and all 4 of you should vote, have to vote unless you have a conflict. We'll get the 5th member seated, and then George and I can go over some preliminary issues with the sunshine law, financial disclosure, things of that nature. And we'll just do those 2 together rather than step-by-step.
Okay. This brings us to seat number 5. I'd like to first of all discuss that this is difficult for me. We have 2 very qualified candidates, and we have one with a great deal of experience on other boards and serving in public entities. So I want to see what the next proposal is. I think take some careful consideration. And I think Mr. Steer's resume was excellent. Okay. That's probably that weighs heavy on me. And I think I'd like to make a motion to support him. Any other comments?
Manek Master.
Yes.
I do.
Any seconds?
For seat 5?
Proceed, Paul.
Second.
You second?
Yes, sir.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Welcome to the board.
the United States of America and as an officer of the Poinciana West Community Development District, and a recipient of public funds as such officer, do hereby solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Florida.
I do.
If you wouldn't mind putting your name and signing where it says board supervisor, you can join us up here. And here's the agenda. And then Mike and I will go over the other documents that are attached to the oath.
I'm trying to do the shorter route.
Congratulations, welcome.
For the benefit of both of the members, let's go over the forms that are attached. Then I'll let Mike touch on the sunshine law and public records law. In the state of Florida, public officials, of which Community Development District board members are public officials, are required to file an annual financial disclosure. It's called the Form 1 Disclosure of Financial Interests or Statement of Financial Interests. It gets filed with the supervisor of elections here in Polk County, and it needs to be filed within 30 days of taking office today. It's in the next form. And annually, they'll mail you, I think there was legislation adopted that's shifting this responsibility to the Commission on Ethics, but typically, the supervisor of elections would mail you an update every June, which would be due July 1st. When you leave the board, there's a Form 1F Statement of Financial Interest we've also provided you. If you leave either through resignation or at the end of your term, that form would need to be filed. We'll remind you at that time and send that to you again. Also, as board members, under Chapter 190, you're entitled to compensation of $200 a meeting for a maximum of $4,800 a year. You're entitled to that, and unless you waive compensation, you would receive that compensation. And so we provided you with the W-4 and the I-9. Those need to be filled out and provided to me because we process those payments. And there's also some information about the Sunshine Law and Public Records Law and ethics for public officials. And I'll let Mike hit on the highlights of those. And then if you have any questions, feel free to contact me or Mike.
Three things I want to talk to you about. One is public records law, second is sunshine law, and the third is voting. And I'll start with voting because that's the easiest one. When we're here today, you're required to vote on every matter that comes before you unless you have a conflict of interest. And a conflict of interest can take many different forms, but the most obvious, for example, if you own a landscaping company, you can't vote on a contract to give it to that landscaping company. And there's a lot of things that are more subtle, dealing with family relationships and things like that. So if you ever get a situation where there's something coming before the board where you have some other relationship with the person that's coming before the board or the company that's coming before the board, please consult George or my office, and we'll give you advice in terms of, yes, that is a conflict, or no, it's not, and then you can proceed from there. Second thing is public records. Pretty much every document that you get related to district business is going to be considered a public record under Florida law. And that also includes text messages, email messages, voicemail messages. All those are things that you're required to preserve. I personally recommend you don't use texting for district business just because it's harder to preserve those issues. Email is usually pretty easy to preserve. You can drag it over to a separate email box, or George can work with you in setting up a separate email account just for CDD business. And so that way it's very easy if we get a public records request to go through and say what's responsive and what isn't. And just keep in mind anything that you actually write, any notes that you take, things like that can be construed to be a public record. So I would just be, just understand that before you're taking your notes. And then finally, there's the Sunshine Law. And the Sunshine Law is also referred to as open meetings law. That means that you cannot talk to another board member about a matter that may come before this board for action outside of a publicly noticed meeting. And that includes writing letters, that includes text messages, phone calls, using an intermediary to get a message to the other person and having a conversation through an intermediary. All that's prohibited by Florida law. Some, I guess, more nuanced portions of the Sunshine Law that you should be aware of. One is one that I'll talk about in my report today, dealing with the public having access to the meetings and not being restricted on access to the public meetings we have, as well as I would encourage the board to avoid side conversations at these meetings that the board can't hear and that the rest of the folks can't hear. So with that said, I'd be happy to answer any questions. These are the same laws that are applicable to city commissioners, county commissioners, and other various boards. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Any questions from Mike at this point? Okay. And that brings us to item E, which is a resolution reorganizing the board. And at this time, do we have a nomination to elect the chairman?
Yes, I would like to nominate Peggy as the chairman.
Wait, here a second?
Second.
We'll do a roll call on this. Well, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Peggy's the new chairman. And I think at that point, Peggy takes over.
Thank you, Charlie. Okay, now the next position that we are looking at electing is for the vice chairman. And if at all possible, I would like to make a motion to appoint or to request that Roy LaRue be appointed the vice chairman. Have a motion?
Second.
Thank you. Everybody?
Yes.
Yes, all in favor?
Aye.
In terms of secretary, George, you are secretary.
Yes, currently I'm the secretary.
I would, at that time, then make a motion to continue to have you as the secretary. All in favor?
Aye.
Second, all in favor, okay. Yeah, you know George. Okay, assistant secretary. Okay, let's have a motion for the assistant secretary. I think that's where we place the rest of the folks.
And normally the two board members are chair, vice chair, the other
Yep.
three are assistant secretaries. And then I've also have someone in my office designated as an assistant secretary as well, Jason Shao.
And who is the treasurer in your office?
The treasurer is the district accountant, Ariel Rivera,
Gotcha.
and there's an assistant treasurer,
Mhm.
Teresa Viscara.
That's Teresa.
Currently. You have the discretion of changing those, obviously. We would ask that at least somebody in my office be a treasurer and assistant treasurer,
Yes, sir.
so we have the ability to manage the bank accounts, et cetera.
Correct. All righty. Okay, so I guess we're going to make a motion that the remaining three board members are all appointed as assistant secretary. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Or do you want it one by one?
We can vote together.
Okay.
Could I make a little bit of a change on that? Could we make sure that Jason Chow is shown as the first assistant
Sure.
secretary? Because that would be normal.
Okay.
Easy.
He's the one from George's office.
Ah, gotcha.
So the motion include the three remaining board members and Jason Chow as assistant secretary?
Yes.
Yes, please.
And who is the seconder?
Who's going to second the motion?
I can second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any other questions?
Next would be treasurer.
Oh, we're going to do that anyhow?
Yeah.
And you said that was,
Ariel Rivera.
okay. make a motion that we continue with her as the treasurer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Assistant treasurer is Teresa
Viscar.
Muscar. I make a motion that we continue with her as the assistant treasurer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
And I would recommend, now that you fill in all the blanks, that you consider one final motion adopting the resolution with those names inserted.
All right. Everybody's got the name count? Here we go. Oh, go ahead, Charlie. All right. Charles made a motion that we approve the resolution. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, so that takes us up to the agenda item number 5, which is the approval of the minutes for July 17th. I know we've had some issues regarding minutes, hence the gentleman making the video of today's proceeding. The point, well, that was on September. Are there any issues, discussion, items, et cetera, with the minutes from July?
I don't have any, with the corrections that are made.
Right. Anybody else? Okey dokey. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes for July 17th?
So moved.
My second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alrighty, let's move to the minutes of the meeting from September 18th. I understand that there was a correction.
Yeah, Madam Chair, there were two pages that were changed. On page 5, I provided a strike-through. A strike-through, it's in the, for the new board members, I think it's on page 5, about halfway down the page, we had referred to Poinciana Westport having difficulty narrowing down to 3 members. It actually should have been the Poinciana board.
Yes, sir.
So we deleted West on that page. And then on page 6, there was a reference in the 5th paragraph, there was a reference to a mandate being previously raised, but I didn't actually describe the mandate above that. So if you see in the first strike-through underlined section, I
Yes.
clarified that Mr. Lurie's statement regarding his election, and then also modified the paragraph farther down.
Okay, George. Any other questions about the September 18th minutes? Okay, so I assume we'll have these corrections will be incorporated into the September 18th. So do I have a motion to approve those minutes with the changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you much.
I would like to make
It
a
was a
comment.
second by Mr. LaRue.
I made the motion.
Yeah, I think you both made a motion, is what I heard.
I think the second was Joe.
Yeah,
Thank you, Joe.
Joe Clark is the
Okay.
second.
George, I would like to thank you for putting extra effort into the meeting minutes.
Sure.
It really shows. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. Now, we're going to go to number 6, the public hearing, consideration of year 2002, 2020-02. So this is going to be for adopting the amended and restated rules of procedure. I would only say that I have one statement and or concern about all of this. That's fine as written now. I know that in the prior month of September, when it was initially revised, there were quite a few revisions. You gave us a summary, and I know I saw what was being done. I noticed then that after discussion from the September 18th meeting that there was actually again the revision to the rules, and that was on page 11, which was actually one sentence. there was only one change, you know, again, after September 18th. And that's fine. I understand now that from the September with this change, that we should be in fact ready to go. And hopefully we are, because I would only just say, and keep in mind I'm kind of new at this, I'm just a little bit concerned about knocking around the rules of procedure and continuing to change and update and change and update. My understanding, the majority of what you gave us in September, Michael, was due to changes of the law.
That's correct. Most of them are changes to the statutes.
Right.
Or cases that have come out that we're trying to get ahead of, or suggestions based on how we found to do things more efficiently with other districts and trying to implement that across the board. So those are the three reasons we redo the board.
Okay, but hypothetically, we don't assume that this would be done more than once annually. And the only reason I say that is because we're getting eaten alive by the budget publishing. Okay, by the time that we, you know, call a notice and publish all this, it's almost another $1,000 worth of cost. And like I said, I mean, I just want to make sure that every time we dot an I or cross a T or add an and, if, or but, that it's not going to cost another complete redo, it's not going to cost legal fees, and it's not going to cost publication costs for newspapers that nobody ever gets or reads anyway. But that's my concern as to, you know, this is normally, I don't know when the last time was that there were changes to the rules.
Yeah, I can speak to that. It's about every 3 to 4 years we revisit the rules.
Okay, well, we can advertise that out, so it'll be good to go. That was just a
And that's
concern.
based on what the legislature does. If the
Correct.
legislature does something that we immediately have to react to, we bring it to you.
Right.
We've not done that before, so that would be a new process if we were going to do that.
All right.
And then there are the changes that you note on page 11. Those are the ones you specifically directed us to
About
make
the
at the
7
last
days.
meeting.
Right.
And then also, we made the change on page 32,
Yes.
which you also directed us.
Correct. Well, like I said, and after the September meeting, when we looked at your summary memo with all the attachments, and I was like, then we had another, and I thought, well, if we have a meeting today and we think of something else, or one of our residents thinks of something else that we need to discuss and put in, then it's additional. So that's only what my concern was. And thank you for your patience. This is the first time that I've gone through all this. So, in any event, so therefore I don't have any other problem. Can I get a motion to?
Madam Chair, before you
Yes,
do
sir.
that, just a procedural issue since it's a public hearing. We have to actually open the public hearing, ask for any public comment, and then close the public hearing, and then the board can consider action on the resolution.
There you have it.
So, and typically we open the public hearing by motion.
Okay. I make a motion to open the public hearing. So move second. Comments, questions? No harm?
Don't you have to vote on the motion?
You didn't hear him?
Yeah, we voted.
We did. Quietly. Very quietly.
I should sit in the back. You're better. I spoke to you last time about 1.3 per in 3, and I support the amendments that you've made. I'm happy with what you've done. This is on page 11. But I wanted to speak to the spirit of this as well. It appeared there was a suggestion, I think last time, of limiting the amount of information disclosed to the public on the website in order to hold down ADA-related costs. I think the people who are supporting ADA access will roll over in their grave at that thought. And I think the spirit that this board should operate under is that everything that you see, we see. This rule is consistent with that now, doesn't require it. I hope that will be your practice. Thank you.
Thanks, Norm. Any other comments, questions, suggestions?
I think, so do you agree with that, George? That's the direction we're going?
Yeah, I think there is a whole laundry list of items the legislature requires you to have on your website. It's very extensive. And I think the initial draft was trying to, it was staying within your legal requirements, but not going much farther beyond what you're legally required. You're already legally required to have a lot of information on the website, and I think the recognition was that there are significant costs to be in compliance with ADA. That's why there was some limitations put on the information. The information is all public record. It's available for anyone who wants it. It's just a matter of whether it's actually posted on the website or not.
But I'm not
I think with
asking for a
this-
defense. I'm just saying, is that the
Yeah,
spirit
with this
of what we're gonna
change,
do?
we will obviously put the information on that is in the rules. So the financials and the other things there was a concern about, those are all part of your agendas. They're all posted anyway, so I don't think there'd be any issues with accessing that.
Okay, good.
Any other questions or comments? Shall we close the session now, George?
So moved.
You just seconded the motion.
You said, okay, the second to the motion? Minute.
Do we need a vote?
I'm sorry, I'm having a couple pains in the head. Hang on.
So we just need a vote.
Yes. We need to vote, please.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
So now the issue of Resolution 2020-02 is in front of you for consideration. Any discussion the board may have or questions, you can have that. And then if you're comfortable with the proposed rules, motion to approve the resolution would be in order.
That's okay with me,
I'm
Any other comments? And I said we make a motion to approve this resolution 2020-02.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Moving on to number 7, the ratification of the agreement with, okay, Burger Tunes, et cetera. This is the ordering services agreement for the West District for 2019. I have read through this again. I don't have any problem with any of this. Anyone have any questions or concerns about this?
And just in the way of background, the board is required to have an annual independent audit performed as a government entity. And the board went through a RFQ process. You appointed an audit committee, you appointed the board yourselves as an audit committee, you issued a request for proposals. You evaluated those, you selected Burger Tunes. They provided pricing for 3 years, I believe. And in order to get the audit started, which the new fiscal year started on October 1, since you didn't have a meeting, I executed this agreement. The pricing is consistent with what they provided in their proposal when they were selected. And in order not to delay the commencement of the audit, I executed it, so I'm asking the board to ratify that action.
Alrighty. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I would certainly make a motion to ratify this agreement, sir.
Second.
Okay, your second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alrighty. Moving right along. Now we're going to, I guess, have a discussion about the holding of a joint meeting with Poinciana CDD District to begin conversations about a potential and/or purported merging of the two districts. I don't know if anything's been said to you, George, or anybody else. I think that Poinciana was looking forward to perhaps this joint meeting occurring next week when they have their meeting, which I do not believe is going to be possible because of the publication.
Their meeting's on the 18th, which we would be able to meet.
We will be able to meet them.
Yeah.
No, we
We
got
would be able to
that.
meet the publication requirement, it's a 7-day notice.
7 day, okay.
Oh,
It takes usually 10 or so days to get, once you get it to the paper. So with 10 days notice, you should be fine meeting the notice requirements. The Poinciana board at their last meeting suggested, in their discussion of a potential merger, having a joint meeting in conjunction with their meeting on December 18th.
Right.
And obviously, that would be subject to this board's availability and desire to want to do that. I did communicate with the Poinciana chair in advance of this discussion to talk about the timing in the event you did want to have a joint meeting on the 18th, the timing of that. And whether you want to have a Poinciana West CDD meeting at your regular time at 9:30, then have a joint meeting, and then the Poinciana board have their meeting. They meet at 11. They could push their meeting a little bit later to give more time. It's really up to you all how you'd like to do that.
Well, I would just say first and foremost, I'm not available on the 18th. That's 1 week before Christmas. We discussed the fact that it was maybe possible, this is going to be a year-long process at least. So I don't think anybody needs to jump through any hoops right this second. That is just my opinion, because I have people coming in and I have lots to do. I don't know how anybody else feels, but I cannot attend that day.
George,
Yes, sir.
George, there already was dialogue, correct, with the other board about the potential of that meeting on the 18th?
The chair, the prior chair had some dialogue with the chair of Poinciana about that, but obviously it's the board's decision.
Yeah. And that the potential is there, and the timeframes are very restrictive now in order to get this done, right? And we all have this, correct? The proposal, the cost, the savings, potential savings.
Yes, I
My only
have
concern,
the 10 pages that was sent.
yeah, the savings, and it also talked about each and every step that Mike and Jan
Correct.
worked on
Correct.
to get that together. My only concern, Peggy, is timeframes. If we don't get it rolling, that's one of the reasons the potential of that meeting was discussed.
You know, delaying this by a week compared to a year that it takes to get it done is ridiculous. And so I think we can easily move this into January. I'm not available on the 18th either. And so nobody asked us if we're available, and then we're going to rush and go to a meeting on the 18th.
That's why it's on the agenda.
Right, and we're discussing it right now. Thank you, Charlie.
Charlie, is this something that you and I already have? Or is it
No,
No,
you don't have that in your
no.
packet. That was handed out to the board.
Good question.
I would like to.
Oh, you would like to see this one?
Yeah, because the 18th is something also.
The only conversation that took place with the other board basically was that there was concern about having a lot of separate meetings and the cost associated with it. It's fine with me, you don't have to rush it, it's okay, man.
We don't have to delay it by a month. We can delay it 2 weeks.
They have a meeting scheduled on the 18th.
We have a meeting scheduled on the 18th.
Yeah.
Right, but they could easily schedule it on the 7th, if that's what works
Peggy
out
could
for
work that
everybody.
out, sure. They want to-
January?
Yeah, push it into January.
Right.
It's-
Well, I mean, one of the other, but I mean,
The regular meeting is the 15th in January.
Well, that's a
And
big
you've got a meeting on the 15th as well.
Right, that's why it's the 15th. I said the 18th.
Yeah, so if you waited until January, you've already got a meeting scheduled. And Poinciana
joint.
has a meeting. No, you have a Poinciana
Same
West
day.
meeting,
okay.
and then Poinciana meeting at 11. You could do the joint meeting after the Poinciana meeting on that day if the ballroom's available.
What date is?
January 15th.
It's the third Wednesday of every month. Poinciana meets, and then West meets every other month. I'll give you the schedule.
Do you mind if I just interject two things here in terms of timing? I think that perhaps the board isn't understanding where Charlie's coming from on the timing. I'm not suggesting you change anything at all, do whatever you want. It's a year-long process, but it's not a year-long process in a vacuum. So if you start the process, even now, it's iffy. But if you start the process in January and you assume it takes a year, you can't bind the board members who are running for election in November to step away from their seats. So you're really looking at, if it isn't accomplished completely by the November election, it's really more of a 2-year process in terms of making sure you have the support of those people running. You just can't take away their rights and say, you're gonna vacate your seat if you get elected. So I think that's the timing issue that perhaps many of the board members may not have been informed of or understand. Yes, it's a year, but a year, and you don't want to start that process and get 9 months into it, get new board members who say, I'm not stepping down, I'm not supporting this. So that's the timing issue. I just want to make sure everybody's aware.
But if it's a year, we're already at 11 months.
Yeah.
That's correct. You
So
are
we're
correct.
probably past the hurdle.
You're past the hurdle on a typical merger. It doesn't mean that some can't get done a little quicker, and then some are gonna take a little bit longer. But you have to go through the governor and cabinet, and getting the hearings before them, and having the administrative law judge have their hearing and everything else with time. So I just want y'all to understand that. Number 2, in relation to the merger, is before, when our firm did the merger agreement, we represented both parties in that, and there was a conflict waiver that clearly recognized that we were essentially a scribe. We were not advocating for either party on behalf of that merger agreement. We no longer represent the Poinciana CDD. Therefore, if you wanted me to work on the merger and work with Jan back and forth on that, I would need a conflict waiver both from you all as well as from the Poinciana CDD. And given the new composition of the board and past statements that have been made by board members, you may not want me to be involved at all. So I want to raise that issue for you guys to deal with, so that it's not a surprise when we show up at a joint meeting.
What is, do you mind if I ask, what is this conflict of interest issue?
Yeah, so anytime that an attorney represents 2 parties in a transaction, that creates a potential for a conflict of interest. When I was asked to do the merger agreement before, both chairmen were the ones that negotiated with each other in terms of the agreement, and then the boards negotiated, and I was basically putting it into a word processor and saying, here you go.
Right.
And in that conflict waiver, or at least in my statements at the board meeting, I said, should the boards ever become adverse, I will not represent either one. I will step out of the picture, and each party would then retain their own attorneys. So that's how we handled it before. It's a little different situation now, because the Poinciana board is a former client. You all are a current client. And unless I got conflict waivers from both boards, I would not be playing any role in the merger whatsoever. And again, I'm not advocating I should.
Even though you don't represent the other board at this point?
That's correct, yeah. So I just want to bring that up to you, because I think it's better to talk about it than somebody be surprised later when, somebody says, well, why aren't you producing this document? I'm like, well, I'm going to wait till we get to a board meeting so I can explain it, so I'm explaining it
Right.
now.
Well, we will need to get George, can your office send that email to our 2 new supervisors with all this information? Okay, so
Sure
that
will.
they have that, something to do over the holidays, you see? Reading, fun reading. And, but I would definitely think that we would wait till January 15th to let some of this settle, because very honestly, I don't really think whether we have people that have agreed to resign or whether they don't. I don't really consider that an issue, because people are moving every day, people are dying every day here, people are doing all kinds of things every day, and people are losing interest every day. So, I really don't know that is really quite such the big issue that, someone may have to resign or get their feelings hurt, but based on how the appointments go, when in fact the merger takes place with, they get 3 members, we get 2 members, and all that fun stuff, so,
I'm just raising the issue because I
Understood.
can certainly see a scenario where you do 8-9 months worth of work and pay for that, and you have new board members who say, I'm not in favor of merger and I'm not gonna step away from my seat. And you've got 3 on this board potentially that could do that.
Yeah.
So does the board always have to have 5 members?
That's correct.
Not
That's by
4,
statute.
not 3, not 9?
Tried that, and tried going 7, the statute's order.
Right. So,
Well, I'd make a motion that we delay this until January 15th.
A second.
So the motion would be to hold the joint meeting?
Hold the
on
joint
January
meeting.
15th, in
And I
conjunction.
think we probably need to hold a joint meeting up front, because if we do it on the back end of both meetings, it could be 5 o'clock in the afternoon based on the way the other board operates. And so I'd rather see us get it done, get our meeting done, and then they can do their board meeting.
and I think maybe if the joint meeting comes first, it's more beneficial for the residents to attend, so they don't have to sit there for 6 hours of gobbledygook that, you know, when
They
they're
love it, I
concerned.
thought.
I'm sorry?
Don't we sell tickets for that?
Yes, beverages?
There's a big line always, that's what I see.
Yes, indeed.
So we're still defining the motion, I think. Your meeting is at 9:30, their meeting's at 11. What would you suggest the timing of the joint meeting be? You would move your meeting to after, if you could move your meeting to after theirs, and you could have the joint meeting first.
Well, I would say, I don't think there's gonna be a problem if you talk with the chair of Poinciana, if we start the joint meeting at 9:30,
Okay.
and then everybody do their split whatever, I mean, let's flip a coin. You know, we can go to lunch and have it afterwards, they go to lunch and have it afterwards.
If we start at 9, that'd be good. Get our meeting
I'm up
done
at
after
5:30,
that.
we can start whenever you want to.
What do we do, 9 o'clock?
Yeah.
An hour for the joint meeting?
Yeah.
Do you think that's enough, George?
It's really up to you guys, but I don't know that there's a lot of issues to discuss. You've got
Right.
the memo, you could
Right.
probably get that done in an hour.
What are we accomplishing in that meeting? Just a motion that says we want to investigate this further?
It
Are we
would
making any
really be an
decisions?
opportunity for both boards to discuss whether it's something you're interested in pursuing, and I think there's probably issues of timing
Right,
that need to be talked about, and if you are both interested in pursuing it, what would the time
Correct.
be for that?
But Charlie, we're not making a decision to do any mergers or whatever, we're just making a decision at best to
You may not
proceed
want
with
to
the
if you read the
discussion,
document,
right?
right. So that's why.
So I think 1 hour is enough.
Get your documents, look at the numbers. These are the most recent numbers that have been put together between, I believe, Michael and Jan. And then we will discuss that. Yes, we want to further define the motion that the joint meeting be held on January 15th at 9 a.m. in the ballroom.
And then we would have our meeting from 10 to noon, and then they can have theirs in the afternoon.
Your meeting's scheduled at 11, so they'll have to push theirs
Right,
to
right.
12.
Or 1 o'clock.
And I think that we're probably flexible. I am. I mean, you know,
Okay, well, if you want to delegate, you want to suggest a joint meeting be at 9 to delegate to the chair, the chair appoints. the-
there you go. That'd be great. That'd be great.
We can, in the event something changes and it's not in the frame of your motion, you don't necessarily want
Correct.
to not be able to do it, so.
Yes,
This is January meeting, correct?
yes.
Yeah,
Right.
15.
What about the December meeting, the whole letter, no?
No.
No. No.
Because that's the only reason this issue is.
Correct.
the joint meeting.
Right.
So I think the motion then is to set
Set the joint meeting
for 9 a.m.
for 9 a.m. in the ballroom.
And delegate authority to the chair of Poinciana West to coordinate with Poinciana's chair on the
Correct.
meeting, date, times for the other two. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Two items related to that. Number one is, I believe Supervisor LaRue, you were not comfortable with the numbers that we prepared before. And so I intentionally stayed out of working on those numbers. Those are all Jan's numbers, just to clarify what the chairperson said. And second of all, I would encourage the board at this point in time to discuss retaining a different counsel to deal with the merger issues. Because otherwise, you're going to be in the same position you're in today on January 15th.
Right, correct. All righty. Staff reports, starting with legal.
One is we have a hearing on February 10th on the cost motion. And given the change in the board dynamic? Does the board wish to direct me to make a different settlement offer than you have in the past?
Well, was not sure that we'd even made a settlement offer.
I think you have.
Was that the
Yeah, it was
$2,000?
around- Yes, that's correct.
We've gone way above that, haven't we?
I'd like to table that till later in the meeting.
What are they requesting then?
What's that?
What are they requesting now?
No, there's 63, 65, something like that.
What's our portion of that?
Your
37%?
portion of that, at least if you go back to the interlocal, is based on your population. So if you go back and look at that interlocal,
So
that's what that's
So really it was
based on.
18,000.
From the plaintiff's perspective, they've said they believe it's joint and several liabilities, so each district owes them 63, although they can only get 63 total.
Correct.
That's their position.
But I believe that the original amount that was being directed to the West District was around $8,000, and then I believe there was another document that took it up another 8,000, of which a percentage of that would also pertain to us.
Yeah, there was an additional 8,000 that they added through an amended motion on the cost for things such as attending CDD board meetings, and other things that are not traditionally recognized as costs.
The recommendation table, I don't know if could you do that?
We want to discuss this later.
Norm would like to speak, so.
The original settlement offer to this board was a little bit short of $16,000. 15,900 something.
No, if we're talking about this particular issue, I'm not in favor of changing the offer. Just one member.
Okay, so they were looking for 15,900, Norm,
Yes,
and you were going to offer 2.
You did offer.
No, you offered to.
Well,
You did.
the other board offered 2.
Right.
And now we've already spent 10,000 in legal fees and additional legal fees,
And we've gone by a year and we got absolutely nothing.
absolutely nothing. So,
thank you.
sir,
The board initially offered 2, they later offered 12.
our board,
The other board,
Was it accepted?
no, no offer from any party has been accepted.
understood. Because I believe theirs was 40-something. Okay, that's fine, Norm.
The initial offer from the defendants to the other board plaintiffs was of 38,000 something, and was followed up by an offer of 35,000. Neither of those was accepted.
Okay, thank you, Norm. Yes, perhaps we need to come back and revisit this.
Yeah, I for one need to get up to speed.
On the lawsuit.
Mike, is there anything we're required to do in the meantime?
No, there's nothing required to do. It was just when we have a change in board direction, which is how I see this. If you want to make a new offer based on some of the comments that I've heard from other board members in the past, now would be the best time to do that to avoid having to go through a hearing. But if you don't want to make an offer, that's certainly your prerogative as well. I'm just bringing the issue up, given the change in board composition.
And what is the motion on February 10th?
It's a motion for cost, for the costs associated with the, well, we believe it's limited to the second bond validation.
Correct, right.
So we could address this in the January meeting as well, right?
You could?
I propose that we address this in the January meeting so our new board members can get up to speed on this.
Okay. I think it'll be fine.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No worries.
So, continuing with my report, I talked a bit before about the open meetings law and why, and 2 reasons why that's really important, that the meetings are accessible to the public. Number 1 is somebody can argue that it's a sunshine law violation if you don't have it accessible to members of the public. And number two, any of the actions that and which could have ramifications for the board as well as supervisors. And then number two, it can cause any of the actions you actually take at that meeting to be voided by a court later, which means you're gonna have litigation expenses, unwinding whatever contracts you approved, and then potential damages to the contractor that you contracted with. So the reason I say that is your gate protocol, this board needs to stay on top of that. When somebody comes to the gate and says they're here for a CDD meeting, which is a public meeting, they need to be let into the community without strings attached, without interrogation, and without being detained.
Has there been an issue?
There's an issue about every 3 times I come here. And I get detained at the gate, and no, it's not a personal issue, because guess what? When there's a sunshine law violation, the complaint goes against you all, not me. So, what I would suggest is that some board member work with whoever's in charge of the gates to make sure that you have the protocol in place and that the security is doing it. We've had situations in other communities where they've turned away people in a sheriff's car because they refused to produce identity, and they've turned them away and said, no, you can't come in. This is a public meeting. As long as you want to hold them on site, you've got to be 100% compliant with that. So that's why the second issue I want to raise.
And just on that point, I've had conversations with Evergreen because they manage the security contract. There are post orders posted in the guardhouse about what they're supposed to do when someone says they're going to a CDD meeting. Unfortunately, every time you get a new guard, a change in personnel, someone covering a shift that's not normally on a gate, these types of things happen. So I think we need to remind them again. I've spoken with Craig a couple different times about it. Sounds like we need to follow up.
So maybe I'm trying to simplify this thing, because folks at the gate have not let people in that are put on the list. I mean, these things will happen. So wouldn't a simple answer be that, like the morning of the meeting today, we make sure somebody from Evergreen is calling all the folks at the gates and saying, today there's a CDD meeting, and by the way, anybody who says the following words, you let them in. Because then you get the person who's letting people in, and that person hopefully will do what he or she was asked to do.
Well,
We're trying to figure out, how we're gonna train staff of 10,000.
No, I understand what you're saying, Nick, but what I'm saying, and I will stand my ground on this, is that we pay an extraordinary amount of money to Evergreen and all of their little employees. We don't get to look at the security I had the security contract years ago. We're not in charge of the security contract. They make all the decisions. They make all the decisions for this ridiculous spectrum and everything else that goes on here. So they bought the insurance company. They are also in charge of buying the ridiculous gate control system that never works. Where we live, it's broken at least 1 week a month. Okay? We have people that are not let in. And I'm just telling you that we can have one more conversation with Craig Carmichael, now that they're going up. He's taken his fee up again, another 50 cents per house, based on the last HOA meeting. They can either do their job, okay, and they should. It is not our job to babysit Evergreen. It is not our job to babysit the security company. And I'm not going to drive around with all these little people at the gates and say, oh, please be nice and let the people in that are on your list.
I didn't suggest that.
I know, I understand that. But what I'm saying is, there comes a point in time, okay, when you pay for performance, you either perform, or hey, I'm all in favor of a new management company.
Listen, I have offered.
It's not our job. We can tell them one more time, George, that's fine. We can tell them however you want to. We can have a meeting, we can send them a certified letter. Okay? But they are going to be the ones that are responsible, and it is not our job to continue to follow these overly paid people around.
And by the way,
Tell us
the
what you
No,
really
HOA
feel.
is.
I'm not happy. Ask the residents out here. We can
What I'm
talk about
suggesting
it.
is that
for months.
I don't want anybody on this board to be chasing them down. But
Correct.
somebody, maybe, George or somebody can make a call that morning at 8 o'clock to whoever the hell is in charge over here in Evergreen or Whitehall or whatever. Because then you're eliminating all this nonsense about, we had a new employee and, that this was thing and.
I'm sure they have a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's always some new excuse. I
Correct.
offered,
Always an excuse.
to Rudy that says, I don't understand how the lightning takes off these systems all the time. I just happen to have a PhD in lightning protection and
Right.
stuff. So, I can help you. And the answer was, why don't you send me some email telling me what they can do? And I'm like, I'm not gonna waste my time.
Correct.
If you
That's
want my help,
exactly
I'll go
right.
look at the system and tell them what the hell is wrong.
Well, thank you for that comment, Michael, I appreciate that, because I know we've all had problems. And I think when you look at the budget, we can't even go there, for the security, over $1 million, that's a joke. That is an absolute laughable joke for the residents that live out here. Next.
George, not.
I wasn't,
That's what, all right, next.
two things.
As long as we don't talk about these people again.
Two things. One is, I know you're on Evergreen, but understand the call to the state attorney
Yes, sir?
and the call to the Commission on Ethics is going to fall on you guys. It's not something that, you can't push that off on Evergreen.
Understood.
So, number two, and your other alternative is to meet outside the gates. If you can't get that figured out, you meet somewhere outside the gate, so that's your other alternative. Also, just with the legislative session, we provided you guys with an update of what's going on there. Amendment 12, there was a favorable Commission on Ethics opinion dealing with the issue we've been talking about with Amendment 12. However, that's also causing some resistance for the legislature to deal with that issue. So the timing on that was not very fortuitous. And then finally, let the board know, we will be sending out a letter. We've not increased our rates since 2017. We will have a rate increase of $40 an hour, which I'll be providing that to you all in a letter after this meeting.
So what does that make your final hourly rate?
I think it would be, I think it's 340.
The last one where I
Yeah,
saw was
310.
310.
Yeah, 350.
350?
350 plus travel expenses, right?
That's correct. And that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, sir. Next. Live. Point Sam,
Yeah, right.
Ms. Kathy.
So it's been fairly quiet from a maintenance standpoint, just a few routine things,
Mhm.
nothing significant to report. One thing that we're doing for the Poinciana district, which is trickling over a little bit to the west, is going through the pond acquisition history, creating some tables together with Clayton and GMS to get pond lists together, maintenance contracts, things like that. So you'll see some effort kind of organizing that together with both districts. And then lastly, I reported, just kind of on the periphery of things, that there's improvements going on with Cypress and Marigold that the county's looking at. I got an update from them that they're still working through some typical sections. The county's consultant is AECom. They will have a typical section report in January. So we'll take a look at that to see what impacts there might be, but I'll keep you guys apprised of that as an informational matter. That's it.
That's it. Short and sweet. Thank you, Kathy. Any questions about the engineering needs, wants, desires, etc.?
I just have a general question, I don't know, maybe this is the right time to ask it. So as the builder completes more stuff and, ponds are created and then given to us for whatever maintenance, I guess. What is the process? Is there some capital that moves from the builder to us? I mean, or do we just sort of have to now start paying for it ourselves, or how does that happen?
I can start with,
Yeah, I mean, if you want to start from the engineering
Yeah.
part, there's a legal part of it too, but go ahead.
from an engineering perspective, I think West has had all the ponds dedicated it is going to get, so.
Step two,
is there
19A
two more?
and 19B.
Okay, Poinciana proper has about a dozen more that would take on next year and the year after. So,
And the same process applies to both the areas?
Yes.
yes.
And so, from a legal perspective, what happens is they present us with a letter saying, we want you to accept these ponds, here's the title work, things of that nature. The engineer reviews them to make sure that they're in good working order and constructed in accordance with the specifications. Their engineer also reviews them. The county at some point also reviews them. And then from a legal perspective, we make sure there's no liens on there. And then we would go ahead and accept the conveyance through a deed, as well as a bill of sale for any of the other miscellaneous improvements that are there, such as a fountain or pump or anything like that. And then what we typically try to do is negotiate with the developer so that if we're mid-fiscal year, that they'll give us the money to maintain it until we can work that into our budget program. And they've been very good to work with in terms of either waiting for the timing of that until our budget year starts or providing some funds for maintenance so that you're not hit mid-year with an unplanned expense.
But the builder is not responsible for maintaining it, let's say, the year after, and year after.
No, I mean, they pay assessments on all their unbuilt lots, just like everybody else does, but there's no special maintenance that they're required to do on that pond. It's the district's pond, and that's the plan for the district all along, is to accept ownership and maintenance of the ponds.
So 19A and B is in an area that's pretty well getting filled out. Are they getting close to turning that over? Do you have any idea?
We actually got fairly far along on it at one point in time, and then there were issues related to the amenities that slowed down those discussions. We are still waiting for some additional documents from the developer. Given where we're at in our budget year, we have not been hounding them to take over the maintenance cost with those ponds. So it's really waiting for them to provide us with those documents. But if the board would like to direct us to go and accomplish this quicker, we can, but there's really no benefit that I can see for you doing that.
No, there's a pond over by where the amenities was gonna be, but that wouldn't be ours, right? Pond, you said there was an issue with the amenities. That pond would not be in our zone.
No, it has nothing to do with pond and the amenities. It had to do with the relationships between the districts and the developer. It had nothing to do with the specific pond.
Okay.
I will tell you, we, in fact, this morning had a meeting, the developer was involved, it was focused really on the Poinciana ponds. And he's, agreeable to, when things are conveyed, if it is mid-year, to fund the improvement, the maintenance for the remainder of that. So it's a good working relationship now. And we did request on the Poinciana side today to give us timing for what's coming online and when. And we'll make that same request of cleaning up kind of those couple ponds. I apologize for not remembering those two off the top of my head. I had the other district on my brain this morning, but we've really been focusing more on Poinciana than West in this kind of cleanup process. So we can add that to the conversation. We're going to talk again in a couple weeks.
Okay. So for those of you that are wondering where 19A and B is at, as you come in the new Parkway gate, it's the two ponds that are on your right. And so the cutoff is that street, Solivita Boulevard coming straight out, I believe. And so anything on the right is going to be, as you're going into Solivita, anything on the right is going to be Poinciana West. Anything that's on the left is Poinciana.
All good?
I just said this designation, I never really understood, so.
Yeah, that's.
Well, I would assume that, Kathy, did you not put that, did you send that map to us? Did you get that to us, or did you send that to us? Because we couldn't print it off, I'm sorry.
Do his email, I can make sure the new board members have them. But you brought hard copies as well.
I was
Yeah,
I
that
was
was a
gonna
hard
say-
copy.
This was from 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah, because we don't have printers that big,
Okay.
because we're retired.
It's nice on a computer, you can zoom in because you
Yeah.
can really read that.
The PDF that George sends is the best tool, so you can actually get it.
Okay.
You can zoom in on it on your computer screen.
Okay. All right, will that work, gentlemen?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. That's it, Kathy?
Yes.
Okay, moving right along to my favorite part, the check register.
Yes, Madam Chair, you have the check register from September 12th through November 26th for the general fund and the board payroll totaling $75,881.58. And then you have the detailed register behind the summary as well as the individual invoices. If there's any questions, we can discuss those.
Okay, ready? George, just out of curiosity, I'm assuming I see a $5,000 charge for this assessment role certification. Is that an annual charge?
Yeah, that's a one-time-a-year charge. It's in our contract specifically. We maintain the assessment role for the
Correct.
district. We
For the
process our
bonds.
prepayments.
For the 2 bonds?
And the O&M. is on the
Okay,
assessment.
right.
And it's certified to the tax collector for Polk County annually, and that's the annual fee one time.
Okay, but this is an annual fee for that your company gets.
Correct.
So if we have, hypothetically, in 2018, there were hypothetically 1,800 homes, and now that you performed the addition, I don't know if it's on my sales spreadsheet or if it comes from the parcel ID numbers from the revenue department, but then say, for example, then you have 1,875 homes, then, I mean, how long, for $5,000? What is this, how long of a process is this? How many man-hours does it take to do this assessment role
Well,
certification?
it's a one-time fee to certify the role, but it also covers maintaining the lien book throughout the entire year. If someone wants to pay off their debt
Correct.
early, they have to call, we provide them a prepayment. We've got to provide them with the release of lien. We've got to,
So you're doing the legal work on the release of lien and all that sort of stuff?
well, it's not, I mean, it's a form document.
Correct.
Release of lien.
Right.
We provide to them, they're required to record it, but, so it's not just certifying the role one time.
Correct.
But we also have the trim notice, so it's an annual fee, it's
Okay.
competitive with all our other competition, if you'd like to look at that, but.
I do have one question for you, George. We have bills in here for Mrs. Leo, and I'm just curious as to why we just now paid a bill that went back to February. Do you only bill twice a year, Kathleen? I don't believe so.
Monthly.
There is a bill in here, your 961.56, that is dated February 28th. And the other ones are current. But this one was just paid September 20-something. And I don't know if it just popped out of one of your past reports in the office, one of your receivables or payables, or
I don't.
I'm just
know
guessing
why.
that this was a fluke, something that got missed, George?
Yeah, I think in this case, they may or may not have emailed it to us, and they were looking through their aged reports and saw that there was a February invoice that we processed. But I don't believe we were holding it intentionally. It just may have not made it to our accountability.
Right.
Could you just update us at the next meeting on that?
Sure.
I have a question also, George. We just talked briefly at the last meeting about this Aegis, this risk advisors. We have this $7,000 bill. According to everything that I have read, first of all, did you put this insurance package for the public officials out for bid? Said you were supposed to.
I was supposed to that? Did the board direct me to do that, or? And
Where did we pick this company from at $7,000?
that, the company.
I know, gotta have $1 million for the treasurer, $1 million for the secretary. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
there's only a couple different insurance entities that insure CDDs. This Aegis is actually the administrator for what's called the Florida Insurance Alliance.
Correct.
It's a local government cooperative entity that was formed per Florida law, and it only insures community development districts and charter schools and
Correct.
some other special districts.
Yeah.
They insure over 300 CDDs. I know this is not your question, but
No, I
I'm giving you
read
the
all the background, I
background.
researched them all the corporate
Yeah.
records to try to figure out who these people are and make sure that they didn't have any connection with any of our friends. And,
not that
but I'm just curious, when I was reading all of the upfront, and it said that this insurance on the public officials was supposed to go out for bid, and
It's not just public officials liability insurance, it's general liability insurance, and it's also property insurance. So we do own some minimal property that's insured. You've got general liability if someone, is going through the tunnel and they trip and fall and get injured and get sued.
does the
Only-
CDD own the tunnels?
Yeah, well,
No,
the
we
other
don't.
CDD does, I'm giving you an example. The other CDD owns the tunnels, not this one, but, and then you've got public officials liability is a small part of that $7,000. So to answer your question, if you wanted to bid it out, we're happy to do that, but in my experience, Florida Insurance Alliance provides the best policy as far as the coverage goes. They're the most cost effective, and they're also the most responsive when there's actually a claim. There's only a couple other entities out there. One is the Florida Municipal Insurance Trust, which is administered by the League of Cities. And what happened is during the downturn in the economy, when CDDs were going into default, entities like FMIT and the others were basically dropping CDDs from coverage. And they left CDDs in a position where they couldn't bind insurance to get coverage. As a result of that, this Florida Insurance Alliance was created to address that. And if you research them, you may have found that I was on their board for 5 or 6 years. And I was the president of the board. But I don't get compensated as that. I was just involved in the creation of that because there was no way for CDDs to get insurance when the economy was failing. But if the board is interested in getting other quotes, we can do that.
Well, I just, I've been around a long time, and I've seen a lot of insurance policies, and I just find this, of course, in accordance with the state of Florida, everything is so whacked out in terms of price, it's not even, it doesn't make no sense whatsoever.
It's
No, I'm not gonna confront you about being on the board, speak in the camera though. Look at the camera, where's the camera? Okay, but,
And you have no
If it-
ownership in this.
if at
company.
all
It's not a
possible,
company, it's a cooperative.
yeah,
I don't have any ownership in Aegis, which is the administrator of that firm, of that cooperative insurance entity. I was on their board for 5 or 6 years when it was first created, really because CDD couldn't get insurance.
Right.
And there was a need for that. I'm no longer on it. Now they have elected officials that are on that board because they're offering workers' comp and some other things.
could you, in order to put this
And I haven't been
aside?
on there since I've been the manager.
That's all right, that's okay, George, I'm not making any accusations.
Right.
But could you have someone in your office possibly shoot me like the cover page, or
Yeah,
just as long as it's not a
declaration.
300-page binder?
And I can send you the declaration.
I'd like to take a peek
I'll
at
send
it,
it
if
all
you don't
over.
mind.
And it's not required to be bid to under your rules, just to make sure that you all are aware of it.
Okay, sorry, George. We have a $14 bill that says domain. $14, domain. That's all it says.
Which bill is that?
Says June 2019, it was dated 10/2. All it says is domain.
This is a good illustration. It'd be really helpful if you would, for each section, put numbers at the bottom of the page, and we'd be able to find things, because otherwise we're just paging through to find it.
Well, the register itself has numbers, but the
Right.
invoices are not numbered.
Right, but
Right.
the page numbers we could reference when we're discussing, so you wouldn't have to page through it, and I wouldn't either.
but it just says GMS Central Florida
Yeah.
domain.
It's for your website domain, and that, I don't know, we have to actually pay for the points.
That's in addition to the $125 that we pay a month?
Yeah, it doesn't cover the domain registration. The 125 just includes managing the website.
Managing the website. Is this a once a year, or is this monthly?
Once a year.
Okay, George. I think I asked you this last month in September, I'm not sure, but every month you give us an $833 charge on field management. Who is that?
That's Clayton.
Oh, well, if it's Clayton. Doggone it, sorry.
Yeah, one of the components of our contract is to provide field management,
Yes, sir.
which is managing the aquatic contractors, the on-site issues, the contractors.
Second set of eyes,
Yeah,
or just
so-
bringing all that?
So it's billed monthly.
Okay, got it. Almost done. Oh, that's $10,000, let's see. That's all of it. It's okay, that's bad these. Yeah, $100 on publication cost. All righty. Any other questions on the check register? George, are you sure?
I had a question from Michael. There's trip from 9/17/19, travel to board meeting 3 hours. And then there's another one for disbursements of $403.15 for travel. What is, that doesn't represent the 3 hours, what is the 403 for?
That would be for the hotel room, as well as the mileage. That'll be the.
So we got a real deal on mileage, 3 hours, and we only got charged $403?
Yeah, I think that that's consistent with my contract.
You normally charge the full rate on travel.
I'm sorry?
You normally charge the full rate for travel, of $310 an hour.
That's correct.
So 3 times 310
Uh-huh.
would be over 1,000, and you charge 403, not that I'm complaining.
No, I think
I don't
that's just for
understand,
travel
but
and
there's a
mileage.
time component and an expense component.
Right.
You're
So
confusing
this
the
is
two.
mileage.
It's mileage in the hotel room because you all meet at 9:30 in the morning.
Okay, all right, I got you.
Any other questions on the check register? All righty.
You could ask him why he started for you. You're too kind.
I've done that before. It's not a good thing.
Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, balance sheet income statement is,
These are unaudited through October 31st, which is the first month of the new fiscal year 2020.
correct.
There's no, the board historically has made a motion to accept these, but as you can see on the assessment side, we don't start receiving assessment revenue until late November, early
Right.
December, so on the revenue side, you'll see 0 collected under assessments. Our expense side, our actuals are 29,000, and it's a prorated budget of 41,000 for the month.
Okay. Any questions on that? Anyone? No? No? Would you like a motion now?
Yeah,
that what you like?
typically, you.
Motion for the
make
check
a motion to
register?
accept.
Separate? Okey dokey. I'd like to make a motion for the approval of the check register. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
George is writing. Do I have a motion for approval of the balance sheet and income statement?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can we get a
Okay.
second?
Now that I know what the $833 is for, did your time to shine. Ready?
We got a Super Bowl. All right, good morning. As usual, I'll provide for you a field report here, and I'm going to go through the details with you. The first item coming up is some completed items that were completed during the period between the last two board meetings. This erosion repair around these miter ends was fully completed. Last time we were kind of in the middle phase of there with the dredge stocks just having been laid. They were filled in. You see the two bottom pictures there, completely buttered up against it. So I would say a very successful repair. It's maintainable, it's mowable, and it resolves the issue of the exposed mitered end sticking out the water as it is in the top picture there. Some other items where a dry pond was not draining as fast as it should be. So I actually went out there and cleared it out, removed the obstructions, and now it's draining back to normal. And then with that dry pond, we also had dry ponds. Some sections were getting a little hairy again, so we had them mowed down, and they are, as of right now, nice and low and cleared. Another item that went down is hydrilla treatment. We discussed some hydrilla ponds, some problems with hydrilla with the systemic treatment that we carried out earlier in the year with Clark carried out, I'm sorry. Some issues with that they had with the treatment. They actually went in and did kind of just a straightforward treatment, and it did show a lot of results from my reviews, especially in pond 15, which was basically topped out entirely with the hydrilla. But as for now, the systemic treatment will be then carried out next year, which is in theory supposed to more eradicate it on a more permanent level. If you have any questions, the tech is here to answer specific questions with that. Some other items in progress. We did have some planktonic algae blooms, which I'm sure everybody's aware of because of how they do cause a smell and they're pretty unsightly in some of the ponds. Pond 8, the biggest pond in West, had a pretty major bloom. Myself, the tech, went and spoke to many residents around the pond, assessed the issue. As you can see, the first picture there is the way that it very first looked when the issue came to our attention. And you can see the reductions going through. There's still some algae on top, but you know the treatments are continuing, and it is what I would consider to be under control until we finally have the opportunity to eradicate fully working with Clark. In my reviews, I actually did a full ride around on a golf cart that whole pond just last week to make sure that everything was looking good. Going into another item that's in progress is the fish. We had discussed for Pond 6, the fish. I've been working with a company that will basically provide us what they recommended for the pond for specifically midge management, and the larva would be a bluegill and red-eared sunfish mix. They recommend 500 for that pond that size.
Is that 500 each?
No, it's 500 that comes in a mix, so they're just mixed in there. So it's a total of 500 fish for a pond that size to help reduce it. You know, obviously there already are fish in there. What you're looking for is the smaller fish, not things like bass and that sort of thing. You're looking for the bluegills and the brims and the red-eared sunfish that are gonna eat the larva. So basically that's only $200. That's to pick them up, deliver them. They basically just give them to you, put them in, and I discussed with them how to actually just put them in. It's very similar to a fish tank actually. So that's something that if the board doesn't want to proceed with that, we can get that as well.
And we're gonna do that, we're gonna go pick the fish up and do the installation.
Yeah,
No additional cost to the district, because it's under the minimum threshold for them to do it. So we discussed it, and Clayton's gonna pick them up, and we'll.
That's fantastic, thank you.
Thank you, Clayton.
So we can get that done for you.
Do you have a targeted timeframe on when that will get done?
Yeah, so one thing that did occur, when we had the first kind of really cloudy and it got cold, we had some reduced oxygen levels basically across all of Solivita. A couple ponds had, 5 or 6 fish die. So what I'm gonna have them do, or I'm gonna have Clark do, is I wanna recheck the oxygen levels and the temperature of this pond. So I'm estimating probably towards the end of the month, around 2 weeks or so, assuming that the oxygen levels are at the right spot, the temperatures within a good range, 75 to 82 range. for those fish, so we want to make sure that it's in there, and we just add them in this week. So,
Is there a chance that the cold temperatures will cause an oxygen issue again and we'll have to restock fish again?
I'm hoping not, of course, I'm not.
Or is it
Science
better
on
to
that.
wait till February?
It's usually a transition issue, it's when it goes from warm to cold.
Okay.
It's usually not, you know, once you get through that transition.
Yeah, it kind of
But
causes.
we're only
a-
talking a couple $100 a fish if we've got drought and,
Yeah.
you know.
And I did discuss this with them, and they said there's been some, it should be, as far as that, should be good to add them now. I did clarify that with them specifically, is this an okay time to add them? And they said, yes, your auctions are good, and that they'll be fine. So then another couple questions, going into the Clark reports here, of course, there's plenty of details provided there that I'm not going to go through all the individual ones unless you have specific questions. But there were some questions about the treatment of Pond 6 and some errors perhaps in the reports. Went with them, went back with them, discussed that with them. They had been treating it since July, just after it was approved. There was some clerical errors in getting it in the report. So I actually had them go ahead and backdate it, but I also had them send me the specific reports, which are actually at the very end, which literally will show the pounds of pellets that they use and all that. So there's some additional information there. Just kind of make sure that, you know, we're all on the same page there, that it does show. So that means there is the spray treatment in the air, the ULV treatment, and then also the pellets are going in. And this shows there were no pellets in October due to there not really being a need. And that's also reflected on the report there, and that's called Clark Meats. They don't need to put the pellets in, even though they won't go forward with it. I did review the pond, went around it, and I saw very little midge activity. That's for now. Hopefully it stays that way, but we don't know if it will remain that way. But we'll keep treating it, keep on top of it, and some fish. Hopefully, such a small pond shouldn't be too much of an issue to deal with. There's no other questions though. That's all I have for the board today.
The one other thing I'd like to see is if we could get an explanation of which, each of these chemicals, what it does, how long the treatment lasts, what you're trying to accomplish. That would be very helpful.
Okay, I'll see if I can pull anything like that from Clark, perhaps.
I asked last time for that, and I haven't gotten anything.
Okay.
So that'd be helpful.
Specifics on the actual chemical.
Of what it accomplishes, when you use it, why you use it, how long the treatment lasts.
Okay.
Didn't we, I could be mistaken, but didn't we talk at one of the meetings about taking that information and or those definitions and trying to get a piece in reflections? We talked
So
about,
there was a piece of reflection regarding the dry pond meat. There hasn't been a request to move
I
that, I can recall.
thought, remember we were talking with you, with UCF and all the rest about the midges and, you know, trying to get some information again out to the residents so that they can understand, you know, what all is being done, you know, what is the worst time, what is the best time, you know, all that sort of thing. And again, this is what you are spraying when we see your trucks and what you're doing. This is, you know, what you're doing. Because, I mean, I know for a fact just the other day when we had this Pond 8, everybody was jumping out of their pajamas about, well, I mean, one time that we got some fluey stuff on the pond and they just all went crazy and it's like, the guy in the truck is coming around, can you just like give it 2 hours? And it was gorgeous after 2 hours. But that doesn't alleviate everybody running around 25 acres, screaming and hollering and calling you all. You know, if we could just give them a little information about what the procedures are, so that they know what their pains are, that would be helpful. Clayton, I do have a question on the complaint log. A couple of times on this Ladera Ranch Road, there was complaints about algae and trash. Does anybody know, is that a new construction area?
Yes, it's Dutch Pond 15 that was topped out with
So
algae.
that's all the roofers and the workers and all their fluid that they're throwing in the
It
pond.
is their trash blowing off their sites primarily. Chris, I know, has dealt with a lot of it. Floor also dealt with a lot of it.
Yeah,
And
it's so irresponsible.
yeah.
And I have, I think on one occasion, actually seen the builders guys going around and taking the trash as well at that pond. But it is primarily, I mean, all those lots.
That's what I thought it was. I figured it was, their lunches and put coffee cups and everything flying everywhere.
I reviewed it last, it was actually
Yeah.
pretty good, and that's what all we can do, is just keep reviewing it,
Right.
and Chris picks up a lot of it.
When it was topped out with the hydrilla, there was a lot of trash just sitting on
Right.
top of water in the middle of it. So when I took the boat out there and I treated, back-to-back 2 weeks, I loaded the whole front of the boat up
Right.
with trash. And since I've treated the hydrilla, and the hydrilla's been burned down, the
Yes, sir.
trash isn't sitting on top out in the middle of the pond anymore.
Right.
It's just getting caught up in the duck potato, the corn, you know.
Right. Okay.
Wait, did we talk to Taylor Morrison about that? The responsibility for that?
We could reach out to Taylor Morrison about
Because it's really,
us having a
it should
forum.
be on them, I think.
Yes.
It's particularly the construction site, it's not coming from
It
anyplace
should
else.
be on them,
Is that something you can reach out to?
Yeah, I can work on that.
Because I think, you're right on that, Charlie, because it's, a couple of the fellows take their own trucks, and, you know, they're running around doing stuff all over everywhere. They're not necessarily our land on the maintenance people, but, I would think that if we had a couple of areas that are, giving us issues, and giving the residents issues with the trash, that if we did speak with Taylor Morrison, we could say, you know, this area where you're putting up 100 cones in this area, you know, you need somebody out there, you know, every day, you know, to take once around with the net.
Right at the end of the day, and
Correct.
we were talking about the one there was the hydrilla, anything that would get out there would get caught in it instead of blowing
Right.
to the edges, where
Right.
when it's on the edges, it's easy to pick up.
Mhm.
Blowing gets it, Chris gets it, but
Oh,
either way, bigger stuff like that is not.
You know how to make invoices too.
Yeah. Right. Okay, that's great, Clayton. Any other questions for Clayton? Nice and cool, I understand the midges went further south for a couple of
I
weeks.
hope so.
All righty. Next up, okay, supervisor request. Anybody?
Nothing at this time.
I'm sorry?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, well, let's have a little discussion. In general, about, our ongoing issue of, billings, attorney's fees, lawsuits, and all that sort of thing. I know that you are both here, and again, I know for a fact that Charlie is extremely happy with Michael Eckert and his firm and his services, et cetera, and I appreciate that. Again, the most important thing from my aspect is dollars and cents to the residents of West. I don't think at this, you know, I think that what happened prior with the $1 million+ that was paid to Hopping Green because of this purported amenities fiasco is just hopefully water under the bridge, et cetera. We've had ongoing discussions about the meetings, the length of the meetings, the drive time, the cost for driving, the mileage, the hotels, and video and no video, and all that sort of thing. Now that we have a full board, I think that what we should do, or my suggestion, I don't think what we should do, my suggestion would be that we have a discussion about whether, granted, we're going to have discussions with Poinciana about a potential merger, and naturally, when that merger is complete, in effect, we will only need one council. In the meantime, we still are here and we still all represent West, and this also is for the general audience comments, is at this point in time, do you feel, based on what's happened in the past, that you are desirous of continuing with Hopping Green and Sam's? If I had that right, Hopping Green. Do you want to bring over Jan Stevenson, that is currently counsel? Yes, what? Go ahead. No, that is currently counsel for Poinciana, so that, you know, we, again, then only have one attorney. That could also be done. Or do you think that even though we don't have any crazy, wild $100 million issues right now, that we're just going to move forward on, if everyone is in agreement with the merger of the two CDDs, do you think it would be helpful to have counsel that, you know, if Jan represents Poinciana, then do you think that it would be helpful that if we could save probably perhaps money if we use Jan, but also at this point in time, because of the merger, that may not be the number one issue, or do you want to look at bringing in other counsel to make sure that another set of eyes is going to be open wide for all the residents of West to make sure that everything that's done, you know, in the manner.
I don't know what you're saying now, but, you know, explain that to me, what you mean by that, another set of eyes looking at what?
The merger documents, instead of just going with like the
Should have
Poinciana
separate
counsel.
attorney rather than.
Yeah, do you, again, a separate attorney for West?
Yeah, I'm just kind of, if I heard Mike correctly, we need a separate attorney anyway for the discussions to do with the merger, unless we say, you know, we don't care about the conflict of interest that we may or may not have potential. Correct?
Yeah,
So if you choose to recognize the fact that you have a conflict of interest, then we need a new attorney anyway.
Well, that's not what he said exactly.
well, let me make this,
No, let Mike, let's.
let me try to help facilitate what I think is going on here. And that is, I'm representing this district, I actually did the legal work to create this district, so, since 2007. And it's a wonderful community, it's a beautiful community. If the board would like to vote to terminate our contract, I will help whoever else you bring in with the transition and be just as professional as I have been on the Poinciana side. And so if that's really what, because I know Supervisor LaRue, you made a motion for a vote of no confidence in me. So I'm assuming you've not gained a lot of confidence in that since that time. So if that's where we're headed, then I would just suggest the board entertain that. I don't have, there's no for-cause provision. If you don't like your attorney, you should get an attorney you like.
Right.
So, and I would just suggest the board
But
perhaps
I'm
have
trying
a
to get to
discussion.
something because I'm confused between what the two of you are telling me. You're saying that the attorney who currently represents
Poinciana,
Poinciana, I guess we call him, he would have a conflict of interest, if he or she would have a conflict of interest if they represented both votes in the merger potentially, right? So for that aspect, it seems to me, Peggy, for that issue, Poinciana West would probably need a different attorney anyway. Am I right? And if that's the case, then it doesn't really make sense not to have that attorney maybe represent us for other things as well.
Correct.
You know, if you
Right.
have confidence in that attorney.
Mhm.
So that would lead you to a solution where it's not the same attorney as Poinciana.
Correct. Well, I mean, in it, again, in as much as there was a conflict of interest waiver provided for Michael,
It's
okay?
still under effect.
That is
Yeah, no,
still
I'm
under-
I'm not
I would-
personally.
No,
in
but
favor of
I'm
conflict
just,
of
what I'm
interest
just saying, Nick, is
waiver. That's
I'm
not
assuming
what
that that could also, if you felt, if the board feels that it would be in our best interest to just continue with one attorney as we go forward on this merge, the same, you know, conflict of interest waiver or whatever could also be offered up at that time,
Correct.
okay? if we do not want to get involved with that, okay, it comes down to three things. Okay. We can keep or release Mr. Eckert. We can keep or pull Jan over here and see if she wants to do this. Okay, or we can bring in at the next meeting additional counsel for interview and see what we want to do
Well, we
moving forward.
bring additional counsel, you right back in the same box. Now we have to do attorneys.
Correct.
In case you want the same attorney for both boards. The other board wasn't concerned about that, the matrix attorneys, about having two different terms.
They weren't even
Here's-
talking
wait,
about.
wait, hold it. Here's my question. Mike, are there conflict of issues related on Jan's side too? It's
I'm gonna speak to myself, and if I.
the same situation, you know?
Yes, but if the boards are comfortable with the conflict waiver, and under the same circumstances where the attorney is really acting as the scribe, not advocating for either one, and removes themselves from any dispute later on,
That's Jan's situation too?
then it would be a similar situation, but I can't speak to what.
No, it's the
Jan's
same
approach
situation,
would
that's
be.
all I'm trying to say. She's
Right.
faced with the same issue.
It's similar,
Okay.
yes.
Now, let's just get to the basis here, okay? We got two new members, we got two members that have, since the beginning, wanted to get rid of Mike. Period. There was no confidence, it was made very clear, all right? I have the ultimate confidence and comfort with our attorney that I've worked with for 6 years, okay? That developed the district. Not a capability issue in my mind, it's a confidence issue. We've got 5 members. If you want to get rid of them, let's stop beating around the bush. Take a vote on it. He's faced with the same circumstances Jan is. I don't think they're gonna sit there and vote to get rid of Jan because of it. So it's a confidence issue. And fine, take the vote.
All Peggy is doing is deciding what the options
Options.
are,
Options.
so that we
But it's
don't
been
jump in
going on
the water
for
and not know where we're
Since
going.
November, it's been going on, we've been hearing. We've got 2 new members. If they want time to think about a no confidence, I'm all for that. But to Mike's point, let's stop beating around the bush here.
Well, as one of the new members, I think that the third option, which is that we should have our own independent attorney, which, one that does not require waivers of
But
conflict.
we're right back into that again, that's the
Right.
trouble. It's the same situation again,
No,
but a different.
no, it's not.
If we did a
I think
separate
that-
An independent attorney.
You're saying
If they're
have
gonna
a sep-
represent us during a merger, it's gonna be the same circumstances.
No, you're
Oh,
saying
it's
have
not.
a separate
You tell us how
attorney,
some attorney
from
would
the
have
police honors attorney as well as.
We should not use Jan,
I'd be glad to answer whatever questions y'all have once y'all stop talking.
what's the word I'm looking for, merger, thank you.
Right.
We should not use Jan. I have no confidence in Michael, therefore I'd like to see us look at a third attorney.
That's what I'm putting out there. You want cherry pie, apple pie, what?
So,
Well,
I don't feel that we, okay, the whole point is that, is what we're trying to say personally and professionally. Personally, on a one-on-one basis, I don't have a lot of issues with Michael. I don't like his fee, I don't like his travel.
his fee is cheaper than Jan's by a margin.
I'm sorry, Charlie, I was talking.
No, I'm giving you an answer.
His fee is
We
not
didn't answer
numbered.
it.
Now, he's going to give you a letter that hers is $350 and his is now $350.
Hers is
So it's the same.
$375, this is $310. It's going up now. Just get the number.
Okay. The point being is that even though we feel a certain way and you feel a certain way,
Fine.
we have taken the responsibility to pull 2 new individuals on this board that also have responsibility now and also have a voice.
Absolutely.
So we should not just assume and sit up here and say, we don't, gave you no confidence vote, boom, 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 boom. We need to let everybody, and that was the problem, that's why this board is here, is because what happened before the last election was nobody had a right to talk.
And the
Nobody
board
had an
would
opinion.
not talk.
Nobody,
The board
okay.
would not
Sounds
say
like it
was.
of what they
We
were doing.
want, we want everybody to have confidence in us. We don't want any problems. We don't want you saying, hey, I don't have confidence in the supervisors. We want you to know that all of us are looking out for your best interest.
And when the
Okay.
residents asked for an appraisal, and the board set like a bunch of meetings that would not say one word on why an appraisal couldn't be done. There was no reason, and they would not speak, because this attorney said, don't speak because they could use that against you later if it's in litigation. I believe the board has a opportunity and a responsibility to speak to the residents of what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Okay, thank you.
Just for the record, I mean, I think maybe I'm saying the same thing as Joe, but I'll let him state it again for, in his own words.
You would like to interview new counsel at the next meeting,
What I'm
is that
saying
correct?
is that the conflict of interest is the issue for me.
Correct.
I don't know Mike, a whole lot in terms of having worked with him, so I don't know about how good an attorney he is or is not, and what advice he gave people in the past. I can't really speak to that too much. So picking Jan would not solve that problem.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure that's what I
Right.
want to
And-
make sure that I
and-
stand.
And I know that,
Yeah.
the three of us know that, but you just sat down. So we want you to see the whole picture before we just sit here and say, vote, 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 and you're sitting there in the very
And
first
I
meeting. going,
appreciate that very much, so thank
Okay.
you.
This
But I wanna
meeting is
also-
an opportunity for us to
Yeah.
discuss, and it's our only opportunity to discuss
Correct.
what the situation is. And so to get it closed down, again, does not work. That's not what we're here for. And so we need to openly discuss what we're doing, why we're doing it, and where we're going.
And we have comments coming up, so you all are just more than welcome to stand up and give us your comments. So, I'm assuming that, okay, how do we do this now, George? Do we make a motion to interview new counsel? What exactly do we,
Well, you can ask Mike, but
your turn, Michael.
Yeah, two items. Number one is, any motion you make, you need to allow for public comment on that motion before you vote, because it wasn't on the agenda. And the second thing is if you're going to change counsel, I would suggest you have two motions and two issues. One is to terminate the contract that we have. It's three now. Two is to authorize the chairperson or vice chairperson to sign a substitution of counsel in the pending litigation that you have. And number three is to decide on who you want to be your new counsel or what process you want to go through to get your new counsel. So those are your three
But
steps.
don't you do the first two after you've done number three? Because if you don't have a new counsel, who are you substituting with?
Well, it would be when you select somebody.
Right, so the selection has to come first.
Well, I mean, y'all, I work at will with you, so if you tell me today, and I've heard 3 board members say they don't have confidence in me, that's not really a situation that I feel comfortable in. So if you're going
Let's
to,
try not to have those cycles.
if you're going to terminate our contract, I would suggest that would be your first option. And then after that, like you said, I mean, you can give them authority now or you can wait now, but I would prefer, if you're gonna do a substitution of counsel, you do that earlier rather than later.
That's fine.
yeah, the problem with that is you don't know who you're gonna be substituting counsel with.
You gotta interview first.
And,
That's what I'm saying.
as long as, if you terminate Mike's agreement, you're operating without,
Yeah.
That's my word.
I mean,
I can't make a motion to terminate.
Right.
Mike made the point earlier that he went through the leaving of Poinciana in a very professional manner, cooperated with Jan in getting the new stuff in. And I, for one, would expect that he would treat this exactly the same way.
You already said
I mean, so the suggestion would be that you make a motion to solicit proposals.
counsel.
To
Just
bring
like we did with
back-
Jan.
Bring back to your January meeting. You do have a hearing in February. I know the timing is not great. Bringing somebody new on.
Meeting
So that's a good point. Could we call an interim meeting to address this?
Yes.
And how much notice do we need?
It's a 7-day notice, but we have to get it to the paper. I would
We
say
still have to
14
publish
days.
that, just interview counsel?
Yes.
I would give 2 weeks to do that, so I think you're talking early January with the holiday.
Are you suggesting a special meeting?
That's an option. And that council then would be representing us on the meeting on the 15th at that time.
And
Well, the motion for cost is what, 210? I mean, we get something settled in the middle of January. I mean, it doesn't take that long to file and withdraw. Withdrawals council and blah, blah, blah.
I don't know what request I get from the other side between now and then. Obviously, I'm leaving, I mean, I have the right to terminate the contract too, but I'm leaving it up to you to do it at your convenience. And so I would suggest, again, you give me direction. Obviously, Jan's firm is already involved in that case. She could resume that if you guys wanted to. And you could have her or somebody else with the merger, or you could switch after the fact. It's up to you all, but currently, I mean, I'm leaving it open so you guys terminate our contract at your convenience. Certainly, I will help facilitate whatever transition that I can, and Jan and George both know that I'm always available if they pick up the phone and call me for any historical questions that they may not know. And I've always done that, and I would always extend that same courtesy to this board.
So are you gonna, what's the end here? Are you gonna advertise for an attorney at the next meeting or for, put proposals out?
Whatever
Letters,
you guys,
that's what you want?
Yes.
At the next regular meeting or?
At the January 15th. I think we might as well just go to January 15th.
Or we could have a meeting on, say, the 7th, and interview counsel, decide who we want, and at that point, they would be representing us at the 15th meeting. It's gonna take an hour or two, and just get it over with.
Yeah, if we do nothing more.
And that's the whole purpose of the meeting. Do we want to hear audience comments?
Yes, a motion on the table.
Why don't we hear it separately?
Are you
I will
doing-
move that we proceed to interview alternate counsel and that we interview them at the meeting on January 7th, if that's practical.
Special meetings, that's one of it.
I guess when we look for counsel, maybe look for folks
15
that
is
have
fine.
done
I wouldn't spend
combination
them, I don't know.
of CDDs before, would be something we're interested in.
yeah, I mean, that really narrows the pool down, but that.
And that's not that that's the only criteria, but it would be one that we're interested in.
Roy, he's saying, the special meeting costs money. Is it necessary to have a special meeting? Can we do it?
Yeah, in order to have our council, the new council at the 15th, I think it's well,
Well, what does it cost?
it'd be $1,000. It would be our payment.
You have an attorney there, I assume.
George is covered.
Would you need an attorney in a meeting like that? A special meeting like that, would you need an attorney?
You never go anywhere without an attorney.
That's a good
Mike to be here.
That's a good point.
It's expensive to go anywhere.
But I would ask the board, again, if the board directs me not to attend or participate in that meeting, I'm happy to acknowledge that as well.
All right, so is that a motion, have a meeting on the 7th that we're doing here?
Is there a second?
I
This is a
second.
publication.
What made the motion, is there a second?
No, Joe made the motion. and
Joe
I
made the
seconded.
motion.
And Roy second.
Roy seconded.
What, just for clarification, what time would you want to do that?
9:30.
Okay, I'll just need to verify availability
Of
of
a
location, and if there ends up being a problem with, I may have to move the time, but I'll coordinate that.
Okay.
And somebody go canvas, different firms that you know, et cetera.
George says.
George does that.
And typically, a board member is designated, and I would ask you to designate.
I think Peggy's
I have
appropriate to do
some, I have
that.
some thoughts.
Okay. And before you vote, as Mike indicated, you'll have to take public comment.
Okay, Norm.
On your date, the hearing date is set by the Poinciana CDD board, and I suspect that if you ask them to accommodate you on changing it, they'd be happy to. So you're not stuck with that date. If you want to have your meeting on your regular January 15th date, you don't have to do it early because of this hearing.
Well, the idea would be to have the hearing, choose an attorney, and then have that attorney for the actual meeting.
January 15th.
That's up to you, but if you're doing this because of the February 10th hearing date, Poinciana can change that for you.
You can always find another.
Yeah, please.
Hi, my name's Solivita CDD. Can I just have the briefest of comments why there's a, vote of no confidence for the current attorney? And then my other question would be, is that paperwork that's the notes about the joint meeting or the collapse into CDDs, is that public information to all of us to see what that 10-page document that you're sharing? And where would I find that if
Is that on the website, George?
I didn't see it?
I don't believe so, but we can post it there.
Okay.
I can address from a personal standpoint. One of the issues that I had was going back to when the sales agreement was executed. And at the very next meeting, one of the board members said, after some discussion from the audience, one of the board members turned to Michael and said, well, you are going to negotiate the price, right? And Michael said, no, you didn't ask me to negotiate the price. Now, in my mind, that's his fiduciary responsibility. When you're buying any real estate, you ask if you want the price negotiated. The board doesn't have to sit here and say, we need to have the price negotiated. And so that was one of the major issues I had, among others, where he basically was representing the developer, fully representing the developer, and not the resident. And so that's my perception.
Look, I've said this a million times, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts. It was brought up at that meeting, okay, and Mike said, I have to be told I can negotiate, and we directed him to negotiate at substantial reductions throughout that whole negotiation process, okay? That was the fact. So now you take it out of context, all right? It was very clear. He gives us a legal opinion. I can't just go negotiate. The board has to direct me to negotiate, and that's what took place.
Okay, are you done speaking?
So,
I'd like to-
Well, I'm going to speak every time you say something that's not true.
Well, the other issue is that the negotiated price, it got negotiated down so much. It got negotiated down to where we had no reserves in the contract. And it also ended up being about $50 million over what the actual assets are worth. And the board refused to get an appraisal, so there had to be an outside appraisal done. And it showed that the assets were worth about $20,000, and they were asking 20 million, and they were wanting to buy for 74 million. So about 50 million that was going to go to the developer's pocket for absolutely nothing.
Okay, let's go with that now. Wait, hold it. Let me answer this now. So again, the opinion and fact is two different things. First of all, it's $29 million that they came back with the review, that they said they wanted to reduce by 10 because of depreciation. They said that this lot under the meeting house was worth like $3,500. You couldn't even build a building on that property they used as the assessment, okay? Couldn't do it. So let's stay with the facts. Furthermore, the groups, and I hate going back to this. I thought we were done with this.
I'm ready to move on.
Me
Everybody's
too.
ready to move
But
on?
let's finish it, okay? The deal's done. No, the people didn't want it. The board's changed as indicated today, and that's fine. It's okay with me. That's how vote works. Luckily, we live in America. Okay? Well, let's stay with the facts. The other facts were that we were told we can do a better deal. It's a year. Where's the deal? Where is it?
The deal is
Nothing.
that Taylor Morrison refused to talk to us.
Taylor
And we
Morrison
can't force
refused
Taylor
after the
Morrison
election.
to do anything. And so the idea that the deal is gone, yeah, the
It's
deal is
gone.
gone, fortunately, so we don't have to pay $50 million over the value of the property.
All right, to Peggy's point, Peggy, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
This is done. I'm not talking about
Right.
this stuff that's in history
Evidently,
anymore.
you did not live here.
Let's
for
stay with the
past
facts.
couple of years.
But we can stop.
You can go on
Stay with the
to
facts.
the Poinciana CDD, or the Poinciana West CDD. You can go back through, you can read documents to your heart's content. Trust me, there's a lot of them.
You can't live like
If you want it, yeah, a lot of things for the fireplace. That's fine, it's behind us, it's done and it's over,
Done.
kind of like our 50th birthday, so it's time to proceed.
Wait.
The problem is that,
Wait a minute.
okay, there were some feelings, good, bad, and indifferent, and yes, as Charlie stated, We have certain feelings about the law firm. Charlie has certain feelings, and now we're bringing these in. So, that's why that there was this little bit of, little smidge of animosity going on here.
Is there?
We have another question?
Not for me.
Don't go home and get a cup of coffee and shake your head and say, holy crud. Are those people crazy? We don't want to get y'all upset just yet. You didn't live through all the fun. Why do you think we color our hair? It's a long process. Any other, I know, yeah, but if my hair looked like that, I wouldn't color it either.
I do color.
Anything else? Audience comments, anything else?
Is the website up to date?
Any other business?
Question?
Here we go.
Here we go.
Easy, Norm, Christmas is coming.
All right, Norm Gundell, 419 Fountain Valley Lane. As you all know, I'm the Florida attorney. I'm going to speak to the subject of conflict of interest. The three options that you have described, I think you've described them well. I think you've said them well. The first option is staying with your current situation, where Jan Carpenter represents Poinciana, Mike Eckert represents Weston. Second option is to have Jan Carpenter represent both boards. Third option is to have Jan Carpenter continue to represent Poinciana, and you be represented by somebody who's not Mike Eckert or Jan Carpenter. Mike described the conflict of interest situation that he faces because he not only now represents this board, but as a former counsel for the other board, that for him to proceed, at least in the case of the merger, would require a conflict of interest waiver from both boards. I think he's correct in that statement. Mike described his situation earlier where he did represent both boards in the discussion of merger. He didn't apply that to Jan Carpenter because she's not him. But I think that his description also applies to Jan Carpenter representing both boards. That would require a conflict of interest waiver from both boards. So that leaves you with the third situation, which is that you employ somebody other than Jan Carpenter or her firm, or Mike Eckert or her firm, in which case you will have completely separate representation. Nobody will have a conflict of interest. No one will require a conflict of interest waiver. I have heard at least two of you, both Mr. Clark and Mr. Master.
That's correct.
Okay.
But Dr. Master.
Doctor, all right. Very good.
Can you help this cough?
Say that they did not want to be in a conflict of interest situation with counsel. I'm not sure that you've spoken quite that specifically, but I have gotten that feeling from the two of you. I agree with that position also. I think that it would be best to have counsel that is not faced with a conflict of interest, either because of a current representation or a former representation, which would eliminate the two firms that turn out in effect and would require you to find an attorney from a third firm. I recommend that.
And Norm, that would be
Yes.
both boards fundamentally would be a separate attorney to negotiate the merger.
Yes, that's the idea. And
Gotcha.
Poinciana Board has Jan Carpenter and her firm. She has never represented you. So if you have separate counsel, she doesn't have a conflict.
I don't think that's correct.
Yeah, I think both these sets of counsel.
Is there a fact situation I'm missing here?
I thought at one point in time that you did hire Jan Carpenter.
We did hire Jan. We did.
For a specific purpose.
We did. We hired her originally to do that, Jan Barton.
What was
To
the
do the
fact?
merger?
She worked for both boards.
It was to represent the district in the communication with Taylor Morrison on the outstanding fees.
We both boards agreed on that originally, and then both hired
So
to do that, what George said.
But that's Poinciana's
It
problem.
doesn't matter if
well,
we have
no,
a
I
separate.
think what Mike is suggesting, and there's at least an abundance of caution would say you better listen to him, is that if you hire John Doe, not related to either of these firms, you're still going to have to sign a conflict waiver for Jan to represent that other board because of this shared specific subject matter representation. You're stuck with that as long as the other Jan represents the other board. So I guess you would have to agree to that, even in that instance.
But at that point, our
That's what the waiver came from,
other
by the way.
attorney
That's why we did the
would be
waiver.
representing us,
Right.
and there would be no
If
conflict.
you
in
hire
that.
John Doe or Jane Doe to represent you, Poinciana board should not have a conflict with that. There wouldn't be any waiver needed for
But
that.
then John
representation.
and Jane Doe would tell us and give us legal advice on what to
Certainly.
do about that, and so it's a moot point at this
Certainly.
point in my mind.
Except that I think
Until I
Mike's
select
point-
John or Jane Doe.
Yeah, Mike's point is one that, out of an abundance of caution, you ought to listen to, is that because of this representation on that somewhat unrelated other subject, you still would have to agree to allow Jan to represent the Poinciana board.
That's where the waivers came from originally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Any comments, Mike, that the board should know?
Sir?
Thank you.
Thank you, Norm.
It may be a small point, but I appreciate Peggy being aware of even the $14 for domain. Where do we decide on the meetings, and if Mike has to hotel because of a 9:30 meeting, could we have had another meeting so we're not spending those 300 or 800, whatever the money was? I mean, and I know it's petty, but $14 is one thing, and where do we get involved in all this to make these decisions?
Yeah, members of the board, just so you understand, it used to be that the meetings were, I think, held in the middle of the day. We would drive down, do the meeting, and go back, or it was at a time before the meetings got disjointed when we represented both districts, where we were combining it with many more districts. So it was 7, 8, 9, 10 meetings, and you split a hotel room of $125 between that. It really wasn't a big deal. Just the way the meeting schedules have worked out in terms of also having this earlier and not combining it with the other one and us not representing the other one anymore has highlighted, I think, the travel issue.
And, you know, I mean, because of the fact that there's only a couple of us that have just been on the board since last November and attended a few meetings, you know, this is something that I have personally whittled away on all of these costs. But the situation with the, you know, him being so far away, his office being so far away, and all the travel costs and all the charges, that's why he tries to accommodate by having more than one meeting in a day. That's all good and fine, but that's why we have talked for many meetings about video conferencing, you know, et cetera. A screen where Michael can call in, that would reduce the cost, and there's been just a multitude of discussion about that also.
And how often are the meetings?
6 times a year.
Ours are currently every other month.
Okay. They've been canceled, I think, recently. Weren't there some cancellations?
The
holiday.
other
It's a holiday
board
change.
is canceled.
Oh, the other board is canceled.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
The other board advertises monthly meetings, and if there's no business, they will cancel.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other audience comments, questions? Yes, ma'am?
Are all of these meetings open to the public then?
Yes, ma'am.
And we need to get in the habit of name and address and have people come up just for the record. But
Sure.
we can identify them as a resident in the minutes.
I'm Carol Bringes from
Thank you.
764 San
I'm
Rafael.
gonna take your picture, right?
And I'm Martin Fournier from 781 Seattle Trail.
Thanks so much.
No problem.
The question was, I'm sorry, are all the,
Right, that's a meeting.
Are they public? Open
yes,
to
all
public?
public, all the documents of the district are public.
Right. Unless you can't get through the guard gate, then we have an issue.
Hi, Tom Paul, 1357 Delaware. Going back to 80 Homes and Tel Morrison, okay. Mike, you were the attorney for them at that time. 80
Which
Homes
time?
and Tel Morrison, right?
I've been the attorney for the CDD. I've never represented Taylor Morrison or AV Homes in relation to this project whatsoever.
So weren't you the attorney for 80 Homes at the time that all this was going on with the segregation of?
Oh, you mean with the amenities?
Yeah,
No.
okay, then it's I guess my fault, but I thought you were the attorney at that time.
There's a lot of misinformation that's been spread throughout the community. No problem.
Okay, any other comments? Any other business? Any other business to be discussed? Yes, sir?
Hi, Brian Cronin, 781 Cielo Trail. I don't know with respect to this entity what the required forms of notice are, though, for example, written, postal, publishing, things such as that, whether it's electronic or in print media. But I think some people in the room might agree with me that many people depend upon online resources for their information. And you should be aware that when I came into the room and I wanted to update myself on the identity of the board members, half of you are not listed on your website.
The website is really,
Well, the website, I just went on there. We've got 2 new board members that
Right.
wouldn't be reflected on there.
right.
Shirley's still shown on there because you
You
haven't
didn't accept
accepted her resignation.
The last time I was on there, Lenny was still on there.
You and I are brand new, right?
Yeah, Lenny is, not, his seat is shown as vacant.
Okay.
The agenda for today is on there. The minutes for the last 2 meetings are not on there because they weren't approved
Weren't
until
approved yet,
today.
right,
So the last set of minutes are from May.
right.
After this meeting, July and September will be on there. You know, periodically we do file up and maybe not update something, but as far as notice goes, the legal requirement for the CDD is that we run a notice at least 7 days in advance in the newspaper. It's got to be a paper of general circulation. That's the only legal requirement we have, but in addition to that, we send a notice to Evergreen who shoots out, I think there were 2 reminders before this meeting that were sent out.
This meeting today,
Yeah.
I never received
I
anything
didn't
from
either.
Evergreen, never.
And I get their email
Emails
blast.
that they send.
Blast.
Yeah, I do too.
It's not an individual.
No.
Blast.
Yeah, it's a blast.
It's an
Right.
email blast, so.
Correct.
Not registered.
Yeah, if you're not registered to receive them, you may not get it, but we provide it to the
We've
sheriff.
been fighting this for 5.5 years. Get some of it, not all of it, get half of Hampton, some of this, some of that. It is so spotty, I don't think they've ever scrubbed their files. There are people on the files that moved 5 years ago. Okay, I mean, that's not our problem.
Yeah, but we do, obviously, we meet the legal requirement. We try to go beyond that by having Evergreen send a note out, but we don't have control over that end of it.
Trudy Robertson, 306 Moore Park. A notice was sent out by Solivita November 29th.
Thank you.
The blast, right?
For the,
The blast, yeah.
for the West.
Did you get one on
Yeah.
Okay, in any event, that's right. Trudy, you're the new secretary, don't say.
And also on the website is the meeting schedule too.
I was getting ready to say, if, for the most part, we just paid a publication, and I'm sure that the notice will go on there. We've already set out all of the meeting dates for 2020. So when that gets posted on the website, if you want to look at that, you know, and go ahead and fill your calendar in, then you should have a little bit of an advance notice also.
Great,
Okay?
thank you.
Sir?
Ross, 140 Scottus. Some time ago, I was looking for the different phone numbers on the website. I didn't see that map. Could that be added if it's not on there already?
Yeah, we'll add a map.
And where is the other public information that you say is available? If it's not on the website, can I go to somewhere else to ask one of the board members for it?
What public information?
No, I think all the public,
All the public
where they house.
Yes.
Oh, I'm the district manager for the district. I'm also the public records custodian. So if there's any documents that you need that are a public record that we have, my office would provide them.
But do you
To
have
the
an
extent we
index
can-
of what's available?
I'm sorry?
Do you have an index of what's available?
We've got documents going back to 2007. We've got an index of resolutions, we've got an index of agreements.
That shows on our website?
No, they're not all on the website.
That
What-
might be helpful.
What is the records retention on that?
Well, right now,
Have you
the
done
records
that?
retention is we keep everything.
Your policy is you keep everything
Right.
until such time as you change that policy.
How much we paying Iron Mountain? We doing that yet, or you drop everything on a disc?
We pay it as part of our management fee. So it would be in our best interest to have you adopt a record retention policy that would require disposal. Right now, as Mike indicated, the policy says we keep everything.
Yeah.
We typically only keep 1, maybe 2 years in our office, and then everything else is archived. But all the agreements, resolutions,
Right.
agendas, minutes, financials are all
Uh-huh.
scanned and are available electronically. If anyone wants copies, you can email.
Well, I mean, the relative and/or the pertinent documents, I understand, George. And in terms of what exactly that you are looking for, again, there's no litigation pending, et cetera, so I think let the old dogs lie. But I mean, if it got to the point where you were continually being asked for, well, can you go back and then I think that you ought to enforce the copy stuff and all that, because some people.
Yeah, if people want hard copies, we
Yeah.
do have to charge per
Yeah.
copy.
But
If people are asking
the
for.
relevant documents are on the.
Yeah, if people are asking for something that requires us to spend more than 15 minutes, we
Right.
technically are able to charge for that.
Okay.
We're not obligated to produce anything that we don't currently have in an existing format. So if someone is asking for us to do an analysis or compile a report that doesn't already exist, the district is not required to do that. If there's a desire to do that, then yeah, there would be a cost to that as well. But if someone is asking for a record and I have it electronically, typically we'll email it. But if they say, I want a hard copy of that, then we're gonna have to charge them. Or if I've got to pull records from Iron Mountain, because we don't have them electronically, then there'll be an expense to that.
Could the pond map be added? I mean, that seems like.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
said he was
yeah.
going, he wrote that down as a note. Okay. Any other business?
We still need to vote on.
We've got an open motion.
Right. On the,
Special meeting date, is that what I'm heard?
yeah,
Soliciting the proposal.
On the special meeting date,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
okay, so let's, make a motion, but we don't even know where yet or anything, right, George? To hold a meeting,
Special meeting.
special meeting on January 7th, 2020, to review resumes and interview potential legal counsel to represent Point Santa West CDD.
Second.
The motion was by,
And I guess, can I add to that, would be to have Mike Eckert call in, and we could at least save the travel on that one.
okay.
I can call in, but somebody needs to be above the phone and repeat the context of a
Right.
question and a question, because every time we've tried it before, we've never been able to hear.
While we're having discussion before we vote on the motion, okay? I think Norm made a good point that the other board could certainly delay the issue that made the urgency for a special meeting.
Yeah, the 210, the cost motion.
So I'm opposed to have a special meeting. For that reason, I don't see the sense of spending the money for 7 days.
Well, again, the reason for the special meeting is to decide who our attorney is going to be,
Understand.
so that at the next meeting, we'll have our new
I
attorney
understand.
present.
I just gave you my opinion in discussion.
And I'm
I
good.
don't want to spend the money.
Thank you.
Okay, so I made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got it right.
I had a motion
No,
from
we
Mr.
did,
Clark.
the motion is
second
on
from
the,
Mr.
Word,
Wood.
second
Okay.
already.
All in favor?
Aye.
No. Close.
One opposed from Charlie. Okay, so the actual next meeting date is January 15th. I would assume at 9:30 in the morning.
And we'll have a special meeting on the 7th.
Special meeting's on the 7th. And the only other thing I'd like to say is thank you to everyone for coming. We appreciate your attendance. Feel free to call George or anybody, wherever it's easy. Feel free to contact us if you have any questions. Hopefully everything's on the website. And I want to extend a thank you to Manette and Joe for stepping up. Thank you very much. It's nice to have you on board. It's nice to have a full board. Appreciate it very much. So let's have a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye. Happy holidays, everyone.
Congratulations.
guys.